Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us tonight are Martyn Ziegler from The Times and the Daily Mail's Craig Hope. Evening to you both. Let's quickly run everyone through the back pages then, starting with the back of the Sun, which says stuff your World Cup. Cop slot for Ollie and Tyson's jingle bell. The back of Craig's paper, The Mail, says Arteta jackpot and the 8 elite staff set to join Enzo at Chelsea. Front of the Times says Ratcliffe's culture shock. Scheffler, the officer hit me. AI bid to cut off side delays and Świątek beats Osaka in Paris Classic. Back of the Star, fantasy football. Tyson's cracker, Klopp, Sancho pop and United in for Felix. And as for The Guardian, let the adventures begin. Co-warns Olympic drug cheats won't sleep easily, and Świątek digs deep to deny Osaka. So plenty to get through. Let's just finish on the Telegraph. Money, no, that is not why I came to Saudi. Big picture of Steven Gerrard there. And Wembley put on alert for pro-Palestine fan protests. OK, as I mentioned, plenty to get through. We're going to start with the back of the Sun. Stuff your World Cup. Prem Chief, PFA, turn on FIFA. Martyn, this looks like the competition that might have broken the camel's back in terms of player workload, and people are fighting back over this. What do you make of it?
Yeah, this is FIFA's new 32-team Club World Cup being played in a year's time in the United States. I mean, it's like another World Cup. But this time it's for clubs. And yeah, the PFA, the International Players Union, FIFA Pro, all the European leagues, world leagues are up in arms about it. And there is a meeting tomorrow in London. Richard Masters will be there. The PFA will be there. La Liga president Javier Tebas will be there. They will make their displeasure very, very known, very loud and clear.
Just how much of a bloody nose, Craig, might this be for FIFA?
Well, I was speaking to a contact relatively recently who was actually attached to UEFA, and they said, be under no illusions here. FIFA want this to be, in time, as big as the World Cup. Now, they really do have grand ambitions about this. Indeed, borrow your phrase there, Dave. Bloody nose. Absolutely, this is what they're going to emerge with tomorrow, because I think clubs have looked at it, and certainly, you look at it from your own perspective as well. We don't need a Club World Cup. I'm OK with the Euros. I'm OK with the World Cup. I'm OK with the Champions League. We've got enough. Ask Martyn as well. Even as journalists, our season now doesn't end. We're into the Champions League this weekend. Then we're into the Euros. Then you're into your pre-season tours in Japan and America, wherever else. You come back and you're into the Premier League. So there's no space in the calendar for a Club World Cup, as much as FIFA may argue otherwise. And more so, I think the point they'll make is it's the toll on the players' bodies. Just look at the Premier League this year. We've had an unprecedented number of injuries, really. We're going into a Euros now where England have got a back four that was suspect anyway, limping into the Euros because of fitness issues, because of overload. And we don't need a Club World Cup, be that in terms of the schedule, the load on players. Culturally, we don't need a Club World Cup. It's okay being in the Middle East somewhere in December where we barely notice it and we don't tune in. So I hope the Premier League and La Liga and all the others do make the point, and I think they are right to do so.
Martyn, picking up on Craig's point about the workload on players. I mean, we're seeing it already, aren't we, with no replays in the FA Cup. We've seen Manchester United, Newcastle in particular, those squads being decimated with injuries. Do you think this could even go further and club and competitions like maybe the Carabao Cup start to become under threat as well, as players start to kind of fight back about workload?
Yeah, I'm sure sooner or later the Carabao Cup will go, but I think that will be tied into sort of money from the Premier League. I mean, one thing I would say about this sort of threatened boycott is you ask Chelsea, you ask Manchester City, the two English clubs who are in this tournament, are they going to pass up the chance of getting 30, 40 million pounds if that's what it is? And that's what they've been promised. No, they're going to go for it. The players will go for it, because money talks. And yes, we've got a situation now. We've got the Euros, Copa America, we've got the Olympic football tournament straight back into the Premier League, and then going to the Club World Cup again next summer. I mean, it is crazy, but people find it difficult to say no.
OK, staying with the Sun, alongside that Stuffy World Cup is a Cop slot for Ollie, Craig. Looks like Liverpool could be interested in signing Ollie Watkins, which would be a huge transfer if it happened.
Yeah, and you can see why as well. Liverpool have had a long recent history now of signing wonderful wide players. We've seen Mo Salah, the success he had, Sadio Mane, and even the guys they've brought in more recently. The one position they've actually struggled with, and Roberto Firmino was excellent, but he was a different type of player to Ollie Watkins. They've since brought in Darwin Núñez. His struggles are well documented. A goal scorer, a fox in the box type, for want of a better phrase. And Ollie Watkins is that. 19 Premier League goals, I think it is this season, going to be in the England squad, going to the Euros, still of an age, I think, 28, where he's probably got a good 3-4 years at his very best ahead of him. And I think this one could potentially make a lot of sense for what Liverpool need, just to bridge that. I say bridge that gap. They only finished a few points behind, but certainly when you look at the makeup of their team and an area you can identify where they could potentially be short, it would probably be a Watkins type player through the middle. OK, from players to managers, and it is a bit of a manager merry-go-round at the minute, and I'm going to come to you, Craig, because this is at the back of your paper, the Mail, Arteta jackpot. So this involving a manager going nowhere. Obviously, Mikel Arteta, it would be in huge demand, but Arsenal manager's salary to skyrocket closer to Pep's £20 million. This is by your colleague, Sammy Mockbell. What can you tell us about this? Yeah, and I think it's necessary and it's warranted as well. You look at Arsenal now, and there's a style there. There's a clear identity. There is a core of elite level players. You look at the two centre-backs into midfield and out wide, the areas with Saka and Martinelli. What are they missing? Well, this talks to the previous discussion we've just had about a striker, a central striker. And if Arsenal did have one of those this season, they only finished 2 points behind Manchester City. I think they scored 5 goals less than Manchester City. If they'd had that striker, that goal scorer, those extra 5 goals might just have been the difference between finishing second and finishing first. So while we see Liverpool potentially interested in Ollie Watkins, what price Arsenal enter in the race as well? I know he'll cost a lot of money, but you look at that is the one position they're missing. But to go back to the story from my colleague Sammy, Arteta's had a brilliant couple of years there after what was a sticky enough start. But you look at him now there; he's convincing. I think he's erudite in how he addresses the press. I think he's got his players' backs. I think he's got the best interests of the club at heart. And whatever he wants in terms of pay and remuneration, reward, I think Arsenal should give it to him. I think they really have got an elite level manager there. OK, we're going to move to your paper, Martyn, to the Times. Ratcliffe's culture shock. Are United to encourage communal working with training ground revamp and tell staff to be frugal? This from your colleagues Paul Hurst and Charlotte Dunker. I mean, is this what's needed at Manchester United, this complete kind of overhaul in the culture of the place?
Well, I mean, clearly that's what Ineos think. I think some of the details of this are fascinating, that they're going to have the manager is going to have a sort of communal workspace and try and make things more sort of get everybody together and have more of a sort of team atmosphere. I mean, I don't think Fergie perhaps would have welcomed that. He was very much a man who liked to have his own office, and so this is going to be whoever whether it's going to be Ten Hag, whether somebody else comes in. I think it's going to be really interesting just to see whether this sort of new culture that Ineos is bringing actually has an effect on the team. Or, I mean, the other thing they want to is make sure employees treat the club's money as preciously as there was their own. So whether they think that things have been a bit spendthrift, that's clearly the message they're getting.
Yeah, of course, they spent 80-odd million on Casemiro. But just how do you think Jim Ratcliffe has gone so far, Craig?
Well, they haven't made a very impressive start, have they? They don't have a sporting director. They don't have a CEO. Probably come this time next week, they won't have a manager. If you speak to people in the game, there's a suspicion, and we wrote this in the Mail last week, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos don't yet quite grasp the football industry. You've only got to look at their handling of trying to get Dan Ashworth out of Newcastle. The story I wrote last week in the Mail about Dan Ashworth inadvertently sending an email to his own Newcastle email address, his account, revealing the clandestine talks with Omar Barada, who was still on garden leave at Manchester City. So it's all a little bit of a mess so far. And there's other stories as well about, stripping back the benefits around FA Cup tickets for existing staff and the whole experience there. So far, from a PR perspective, the image we're getting of what they're going in and doing there, it hasn't been great so far. And as I said at the top of the answer there, the key positions, which they spoke so much about and how important these guys were going to be and getting them in place as quickly as they possibly can. Well, Barada's not coming in until July, and Dan Ashworth, well, goodness knows when that will be. My information is it will be, if not next year, the end of this year at the earliest, really. So yeah, not a great start, and you only hope these cultural changes they're trying to implement are well received inside the building, because Martyn touched on some of the details there, and it does raise one or two eyebrows, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Let's have a look at United on the pitch then, trying to strengthen up their playing squad. A story in the back of the Star says United in for Felix, that João Felix, considering a swap deal involving Mason Greenwood and Portuguese star João Felix, Atletico Madrid and Portuguese star. I mean, he didn't have a particularly auspicious 6 months loan at Chelsea. Martyn, is he the answer to their problems on the pitch?
No, I don't think it is, to be honest. I'm quite surprised that this has even been considered by United. But I mean, I think one thing's for sure: they can't take Mason Greenwood back, so they need to try and do something to. But João Felix, he's an enigma, isn't he? I mean, he was, built up as this incredibly talented player, and he does show flashes of that. But you just don't get that return, even for this season for Barcelona, where he's been on loan. He's been very hit and miss. So it's, I think if you're Manchester United, you want somebody who's going to definitely deliver, and I'm not sure that is João Felix.
Okay, staying with the Star and the Klopp-Sancho pop, this by David Anderson. Jurgen Klopp has aimed a parting shot at Manchester United's Erik ten Hag over his treatment of Jadon Sancho. Craig, you've watched a bit of Borussia Dortmund where Sancho has played really well, but it's an interesting kind of timing of this comment from Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, I did both legs of the semi-final, Dortmund against PSG, and you travel out there for the first leg, and you're very mindful of falling into the trap of what would be an easy narrative. Jadon Sancho back at Dortmund in a semi-final, playing well on the verge of a final, two fingers to Man United. I was guarded against that, and then I watched him over the two games, and I thought, no, he genuinely was fantastic. He looks like a completely different player, especially in the second leg out in Paris when Dortmund needed someone to alleviate the pressure, to take the ball, to carry the ball, to take players on, to play in the transition. Honestly, I had Sancho over the two legs as my best player. You certainly put Kylian Mbappe in the shade. And sometimes a player, and I think this is what Klopp was alluding to, sometimes a player needs love, an arm around the shoulder, be that from a manager, be that from a crowd. And I think at Dortmund, Jadon Sancho is getting both. And if I was him, I would honestly stay there. It's quite incredible. If you'd have said 6 months ago, there'll be two English players in the Champions League semi-final this weekend, you would have had a fair gamble on Jude Bellingham being one. You would never have imagined the other would be Jadon Sancho. And not just that, he's going there on merit and he's going there playing well, having put Dortmund in that position. So all the best to him. And I hope that they do find a way for him to remain out there next year.
Welcome back. You're watching Back Pages tonight. And also, a big welcome back to Martyn Ziegler from The Times and the Daily Mail's Craig Hope. And Craig, we're going to come to you. The back of the mirror, goals to Newcastle. Your patch, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Everton need to sell because of profit and sustainability regulations. I mean, they've got some pretty good strikers with the likes of Wilson and Isak and whatnot. Calvert-Lewin, good signing?
I wouldn't have said so. I think Eddie Howe's preference is to try and keep Callum Wilson this summer. He sees a greater need elsewhere in the squad, notably right wing, perhaps a new goalkeeper in centre halves as well. Now, I'd be surprised, I must admit, Eddie Howe does like Calvert-Lewin. Now, they've inquired about him before in previous windows. This story, I think, first dropped last week. My information then was, yes, he is on a list, but he's not at the top of a list, and it wouldn't be a priority. Now, Calvert-Lewin's first goal, I think it was, in however many games, actually came at St James's Park earlier in the season after a long drought. He's got fitness problems. I I would be very surprised if this was the case. I'm not ruling out. I don't want to knock down the story without checking it elsewhere first. But certainly my latest information was that they were looking elsewhere for now.
OK, we're going to stay with the back of the Mirror and a story about Jurgen Klopp, who says, I'd have been axed at the Blues. We've already touched upon him having a bit of a pop at Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho. Looks, Martyn, like he's had a bit of a pop at Chelsea's owners and the way they kind of get rid of managers, saying that if he'd have been there, he wouldn't have lasted as long.
Yeah, I think he made the point, didn't he? This was at a sort of a farewell evening event with the comedian John Bishop and others, and I think he basically pointed out the fact that Mauricio Pochettino had just turned things around and then delivered European football next season from a sort of fairly low starting point, and suddenly he was out the door. And I think Klopp was making the point that you have to be almost superhuman to survive, I think.
OK, we're going to go to the Telegraph, and this is a Stevie Gerrard story. Money, no, that is not why I came to Saudi. He makes the point that he was financially secure quite a while ago, Craig. So why did he go to Saudi?
Well, I do enjoy the headline. And the first quote, as you've just touched on there, I am financially secure. And then he goes on to say, did money play a part? Well, yes, it played a part. Of course it played a part. Why else would he go to Saudi Arabia? And it's disappointing, really, because when Gerrard first went up to Glasgow Rangers, great story up there, did a brilliant job. I was dispatched from the northeast to cover him most weeks. Did his first game at Aberdeen, went around Europe with him, and I was so impressed. I used this word earlier with Arteta. I thought he was really erudite and convincing in his delivery. He did a brilliant job there. He got recruitment right. He had a good team around him, and he stopped Celtic winning the 10 in a row. And I just think the next job when he went to Aston Villa there, I was just so disappointed in him because I was really convinced by this guy. He went to Villa, made mistakes, reputation took a hell of a hit. And I dare say if he'd actually stayed in Scotland with Rangers, he might actually be the Liverpool manager. He might actually be the Liverpool manager incoming now. So to go to Saudi Arabia, you can almost map his and Jordan Henderson's journey, as a parallel in many ways. It hasn't worked out for Henderson. I don't think it's necessarily going to work out for Gerrard. He's probably going to have to come back to Europe or back to the UK in some form and rebuild that reputation, because I don't think he will do it in Saudi Arabia. And you look on and you think, the prime reason, the prime motivation probably is money, as much as the headline does suggest otherwise. So, no, it's a shame, given how good and how brilliant a start he made to his management career up at Rangers, that he has ended up at this juncture. Because I undoubtedly think, now his stock has taken a hell of a hit.
Yeah, Martyn, do you think he can come again, Gerrard? And wouldn't you prefer that some of these sporting stars, be it live golfers or boxers or footballers, to just come out and say, you know what, the money was too good to turn down?
Yeah, some of the golfers have said that. So yes. I think, as Craig says, Gerrard basically did say that, didn't he? But, I think the interview does say that he was offered a couple of championship club jobs and decided to go to Saudi instead. So I think that for somebody, if he wants to make it, to put what happened at Villa behind him and have another shot at the Premier League, then he should really have, dropped down a level, try to get some promotion with the Championship club, make his mark there as he did with Rangers, and then I'm sure, because he's not that experienced and he needs to learn. But going to Saudi Arabia, I don't think another Premier club is just going to take him on like that.
OK, we're going to stay with you, Martyn, because this is your story in the Times. AI bid to cut offside delays, harness artificial intelligence and force fields. Tell us more about this. Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, the Premier League, they've signed a deal with a company called Second Spectrum, an American tech company, and instead of the sort of limb tracking which tracks, I think, 36 points in a player's body, this new system tracks apparently 10,000 parts of the body, and with 200 times a second, and basically provides this sort of moving 3D image. And it creates a sort of effective force field that when an attacker goes in front of the defender, the artificial intelligence recognises this and then sends a message saying he's offside. So this is going to come into the Premier League next season, starting from one of the autumn international breaks.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. We're going to move to a story about Jude Bellingham in the back of the Star. Fantasy football, Craig. Playing to the gallery, Bellingham has been inspired by pictures of Real's European Cup heroes at the Bernabeu. I mean, this season couldn't have gone any better for him. He's still very aware of where he kind of falls in the pantheon of Real Madrid greats.
When he talks, he's just, I used that word earlier, he's so convincing. He's almost as impressive off the pitch as he is on the pitch, perhaps even more so off it, given, the tenderness of his years. And he's always been like that. I've covered a little bit of Real Madrid. I was out there for the derby, what was it, 3-4 months ago when he scored the 2 late goals there. And just, wow, to go there at his age and to have the charisma and to take all of that pressure and all of that expectation on his shoulders and not just meet it, but to take it to a different level as well. And, you go into the Champions League final on Saturday, you wouldn't be at all surprised if he's the individual to dictate the game and ultimately settle, which way it goes. And then you go into the Euros as well. And there's Harry Kane, of course. Harry Kane has been there before with England and not quite done it. But this is Jude Bellingham, the first time really when we're seeing this version of Jude Bellingham, the Real Madrid superstar, going there with the country, with England's hopes resting on his shoulders. And wow, what a double that would be. And, you wouldn't bet against it because everything about the guy just screams just class, excellent, brilliant, pedigree, elite. He really is wonderful.
OK, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you. Just in the back of The Guardian, they're talking about let the adventures beginning. Bompasta aims to emulate Hayes as new Chelsea manager. And there's quite a bit in the papers as well about Tyson Fury and his rematch with Alexander Usyk.